Hi, Landon again, back with some guitar video for you, some more guitar videos. Today we're going to talk about different types of chords you can use in the guitar, on the guitar. There are, besides your basic chord, which is your full, what I call the full chord. So if I'm playing the G, that's a full G chord. If I'm playing an E, which today we're going to use the E for this purpose, a full chord of E is that. Okay, that's the middle finger is on the second fret. My ring of the A string, I'm sorry. My ring finger is on the second fret of the D string, and then my pointer finger is on the first fret of the G string. And I strum it all because these are E. These open strings are E. So that's a full chord. Alright, that's what we call full chord. This is a full chord of a G. Full chord of a C. We got it? So full chord, that's the basic chord. But there's three other types of chords that you can play, especially when you're starting to get into electric and you're using different types of sounds like distortion and stuff like that. You may not want to do a full chord all the time because in a distortion, with the distortion pedal and some of the other effects pedal, it gets muddy. So you want to kind of clean up and maybe not do a full chord. So the first chord I want to talk to you about is a power chord. And you'll see electric guitar players, if they're playing what we call rhythm, which I will explain in the next video, which is about strumming. I will, when you see rhythm, they're not playing full chords on electric. Most of the time, they're playing power chords, especially if they're doing distortion, right? So a power chord is simple. So for the key of, for a G, let's just use a G chord, you're just gonna play the 1, 5, 1, okay, of the scale together for a power chord. Now, if you don't know what those numbers are, I say go look at the scale videos, go look at the number theory videos, and that'll help you. But in the major scale, the first note or your root note is a 1. You count down 2, 3, 4, 5, or on the guitar, if you're on the E or A string, you always start with the root on the E or A string, depending on what chord you're playing. So I want to play a G power chord, so I start with a G there. I just go down a string and down 2 frets, that's the 5. And then the same fret, 2 strings down is the 1, the octave. Okay? So that's a G power chord, and I'll just play those 3 strings. Like that, okay? C, D, E. And you can do that whether it's major or minor, because a major or minor chord, the 1, 5, 1 always stays the same, right? So that's a common thing used for distortion. It's called a power chord. So maybe you're new to playing guitar and you haven't got the whole full chord, all the full chords down, and you're wanting to play in church and worship band. I encourage you to learn power chords first. Get on electric and you can at least do some rhythm and help the band out. As long as you just know where the notes are on the fretboard, you can play a chord progression of, let's say, E minor, C, G, D, which is your 6, 4, 1, 5 chord progression with power chords. So you can do your E, C, G, D. And you can at least add something to the band, even though you don't know all the full chords yet. So the power chord is definitely a chord to use when you're learning and starting out, and especially when you're using effects on pedals. It can help get it nice and clean. Another chord is the power chord. A power chord is simply when you bar, which is basically like using a capo. If you don't know what a capo is, you'll see these little clips that you can put on a fret, which basically transposes the chord you're playing. It knocks it up a half step for each fret. You put that on. And so what we're doing is the E chord, what I showed you earlier, for any note that I'm playing on the E string, I can use the combinations of E chords, whether I'm playing E major, E minor, whatever chord I want to play. I just bar it and move it down, right? So again, here's an E. So I can play a G major chord by barring that note where that fret where that G is and playing an E underneath it. So here. All right. Now what really is good for this is when you start getting to play like in funky keys, and you're playing like in the key of A flat, and they want to play an A flat minor 7, you can just go, or an A flat minor, you can do the E minor, bar it on the A flat, and play that. All right, instead of trying to find the full chord. So the bar chords help you get full chords by just moving up and down the fretboard with a combination of E. Now, if you're a note, the root note you're playing is on the A string, then you will bar it and you will play some combination of the A, your A chord, okay? And that becomes that note. So C, I'm playing a C major, right, in a minor 7, which is the A minor 7 chord underneath that C. All right, so that's the bar chord. Now it does take a little bit of work because getting that one top finger, that pointer finger, to mash down all the strings on a fret so they make a clear sound can take some practice. But I recommend you start with just doing this with your pointer finger across and taking your middle finger and pushing it down until you get the feeling of it. And then you can start adding or notes underneath it. So that's a power chord. So a bar chord. So we've done power chord first, which is your 1-5-1. Your bar chord, which is just taking a combination of the E or A notes and putting a bar over it and going up and down. So you can play different notes on the E or A string and make them a chord, with major or minor. And then the last one is what I call open chords. And this is sometimes used a lot more on acoustic guitar because it gets a little bit more airy, and the key of E or A is usually what it's done in, simply because of the open notes. And what an open chord is meaning that you are only doing 2 or 3 fingers pressing down on strings, and you're using the open strings for everything else. And a lot of times you're sliding up and down. So for instance, in the key of E, I can just do an E power chord, okay, and then strum everything else to make a full E. Okay, and then you can kind of play with the tone, and I can just take that power chord of E because these 2 strings are E, and I can still play like a B power chord but hit all the strings. C sharp, A, and play kind of open E of that. And you can do that with some open strings, open chording, especially when you mess with different tunings and all of that, which I'm not going to get into today. But that's 3 basic different types of chords besides your normal full chord that you can tap into. And I really encourage all of you who are playing electric guitar to learn the power chords and do those first, because that will help you contribute right away. Thank you very much for watching this video.